Good morning or good afternoon, Eric. How's it going today?
That's great, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I'm excited to talk to you. So, for those listening, I met Eric through the NTMA, a fantastic organization that I would encourage you to join if you're a machine shop. And Eric has a fascinating story. So, I just was learning this, but his grandfather started a company called Hoppe Technologies. That was his grandfather's nickname back in 1941. And then Eric eventually got into and took over that business, sold it successfully several years ago, and started another company, Pilot Precision Products, which he currently now owns and runs today. So, Eric, welcome to the show, and thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Paul. It's fun to be here.
Yeah. So let's start with Hoppe. That's a lot of legacy back from 1941. Tell us about your grandfather, how he started that business, and what it evolved to over the years.
Sure. Thanks for giving me the opportunity, and thanks for having me on. My grandfather came to America from Armenia, fleeing genocide in the early 1900s. And he was about 8 years old when he arrived in America. His father came here a few years early to get a job and send money back to the family to get them out of the country.
Wow.
And then a couple of years, he worked at the Indian Motorcycle Factory in Springfield, Massachusetts, as a uh,
Amazing.
what we call a tin knocker nowadays, but he was a sheet metal worker, and that was his vocation in Armenia, was making sheet metal type tools and so forth. Anyway, sent some money back. The family packed up their stuff and in their rugs, rolled up the family possessions in all the rugs in their
Wow.
dirt floor home, and uh, through many stagecoaches and boats and steamships and so forth, they made their way to America. There was my grandfather, his two sisters, his mother, and his baby brother, and and they made it here, and arrived without a without much, essentially. Typical immigrant story.
Yeah.
Didn't speak English, just boom, drop them in and go.
Right. Wow.
So his,
Amazing.
the exciting part about him was just that how eager he was to be an American boy, and
Mm.
learn English and lose the accent. He died at the ripe old age of 96, no accent. He was just destined to be an American. He excelled in mathematics, and so as a result, became interested in manufacturing. His dad was in manufacturing, so it seemed to make sense. And so he got an eighth grade education, up to eighth grade education, and had to take care of the family because dad died. So
Oh
uh,
no.
and now he had to take care of mom and the kid and his brothers and sisters, and oh boy, they had another baby when they were in America. So
Okay.
uh, so he was forced to go to work and take care of the family, which he did, and became a trained tool maker, and ended up working at Henry Ford's plant, the Rouge plant,
No kidding.
and then came back to Springfield, Massachusetts, really during the Depression, working for the Springfield Armory, and became the chief toolmaker at the Springfield Armory until one day his cousin, who was in the printing business in Boston, Melrose, uh, made him some business cards and some letterhead, and came to visit and said, you really should start your own company. And so here's your letterhead. So he named the company, the cousin did. He named it AJ, which was my grandfather's name was Avadis John
Okay.
Hagopian. So he named it AJ Hoppe Tool Works.
Okay.
And that was the original name of the company. And so then they started it in their garage. I mean, my grandfather and his brother got a couple of machines in the garage. My grandmother taught English in Armenian school and upstairs in the garage attic
Okay.
for other immigrants that came here to be able to assimilate to Americans. And that was it. That off went the business. 1941, and that by 1950, I'd say probably around 1945, 46 time, they had outgrown the family garage and built a purpose-built factory building not far from where they were. And the company grew. And then 1964, they built another building, bigger building. My dad graduated engineering school from the University of Massachusetts and went to work at the family business. Took over the company, and from 1966 till probably I guess I came along around 1990, entered the business. And then by 1995, my brother and I took over the business from our dad, day-to-day operations, then purchased and gifted and through some different mechanisms for tax efficiency, took the business over.
And at that point,
that's it.
when you and your brother took over, what did the business look like? Employees, work type of work? What were you guys doing at that point?
So originally, when Hoppe started the business, they were tool makers. They just made dies, fixtures, jigs, and so forth. Then when my dad took over the business, he wanted to be in the production parts business, but still defense, because it was primarily a defense business. So he became engaged with General Electric and Raytheon and so forth, and made what I would consider to be high complexity, low volume, high mix. It was a shop that basically did that stuff. Yeah. And then when Doug and I took the company over, we endeavored to be a little bit less mix, lower mix, medium complexity, medium to high complexity, and medium volume. So we made some distinct changes in the business that were very helpful in terms of profitability and planning and so forth.
And did you do that by pursuing specific clients or buying equipment that was suited to that scale and type of work, or probably some of each? Can you describe that a little bit? Because I know this is a transition that a lot of shops want to make. They're stuck in, super high mix, low volume. You need super skilled people all the time doing multiple setups a day. How did you make that transition?
Well, so the first thing is that my brother, Doug, is a great teacher. And so he began to teach after hours. He would teach the guys that were running the equipment. He would teach them programming, geometric tolerancing and dimensioning, and so forth. So he ran classes in our building and trained these guys on how to be CNC machinists, programmer, so that they could set up, program, edit, the whole thing. Right. And then his vision was to create what he called a tech center, which we bought 6 Haas machining centers and put these guys to work that were really former tool makers that were now making precision, production type parts.
Right.
On my end, I went out and acquired relationships with some customers, one in particular that had nothing to do with anything that we'd done before, and that's Gillette. So Gillette makes, razor blades. And so we were able to get Gillette to give us an opportunity to become part of their supply chain. And the parts really lent themselves well to the tool maker because they're tools, even though they're production tooling, it's tools. So these guys were able to make a very nice transition over to a quasi production atmosphere, still making tools. So they had to be, they were M2, they were A6, I should say, and hardened and ground and so forth. So it was all very similar, but different. And so that was the beginning of the transition. Then we stuck our neck out and we bought a Mazak Integrex. Okay. And at a time when nobody else had one. And so we didn't know how to run it either.
Sure.
But same thing I acquired. So I was the chief sales dude and my brother was the chief manufacturing dude. And so I went out and got the business and then he figured out how to make the stuff. And so I got a telecom contract at the time when telecom was the big hot new thing.
Mm-hmm.
and to make these little Kovar packages for
Okay.
electronics.
Sure.
I got an order for, I don't know, 75 for 100,000 pieces. So we had a turnkey done, but before the turnkey was done and we had the first part off, they canceled the order.
Oh no.
So the whole market went to hell.
Right.
So we ended up with a Mazak Integrex that nobody knew how to run and a whole bunch of material and cutting tools. And necessity being the mother of invention, we learned how to run that machine and became extraordinarily successful by running multitasking machines. We ended up with 9 of those machines.
Yeah.
So
and what year this would have been?
it was late
Approximately?
90s. Yeah,
So that
98,
was
9.
there wasn't a lot of shops doing that level of automation back then.
No, and we had overhead robots. We had they were bar feed. Some machines were equipped with multiple turrets. We
Mm-hmm.
really, I mean, we had an interest. We were in an interesting time in the business because we were able to compete. I mean, we were unstoppable because nobody else had equipment like that at the time. Now it's commonplace.
Sure. Wow.
So in addition to that, though, Paul, we also decided we wanted to be in the 5-axis CNC milling business.
Okay.
And so for that, we had to go out and we had to really stick our neck out again. So we bought a cell, 2 DMU 60Ts DMG machines. This was before the DMG Mori
Yep.
cooperation with a Fastums pallet system. And same thing. We have all the systems. Now we got to find the work, and
Right.
we're successful in finding the work. And it took us a long time to get up and running, and we lost a lot of money over the first year or so. But ultimately, that turned out to be a fabulous business for us, and we ended up expanding quite a bit, actually, in 5-axis, fully automated, not with DMG, but with Mazak.
Sure. Got it. Okay. Yeah, that's. I mean, there are. You kind of hear stories of sort of the what comes first. Do you buy the equipment, then go find the work, or do you find the work and then buy the equipment to support it? And it sounds like you guys bought the equipment and knew that would lead you to success, or at least had enough of a gut feel that you went for it.
There's a lot of risk in this business. I think anybody who watches your podcast knows
Yes.
it's a tough business, heavily capital intensive, and things move very slowly in terms of change until they don't, and then it moves fast.
Sure. Wow, that's a really cool story. And then so sounds like you were always focused on sales. That's safe to say? Pretty much the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, when we took over the business, I think the business did about $6 million in revenue.
Okay.
And so it was pretty easy to have that bifurcation between Doug and myself, because we were a relatively small company. As we got bigger, it got more complicated.
Sure.
Because the customers kind of change. I mean, once you get over, say, 10 million, things got a lot easier between, say, 10 and 15 million. Because you have scale, you can do a lot more things,
Sure.
in the business. And we got the business all the way up to around 30 million. And, then it becomes more complicated again because, the people that you're dealing with are a lot different. The level of discussions that you're having with customers is different. You're not dealing with the people that are actually buying the stuff. You're dealing with the strategic, corporate purchasing people and that sort of thing. So, things changed dramatically for the business.
Yeah. And what year did you sell the business?
2011.
Okay. So I do want to come back and talk about the selling process because I know that's of interest to many people.
Sure.
Can you just describe a little bit of that growth period, like what you? Well, I think I'm guessing part of your success, besides being very aggressive on equipment, is the fact that you were, focused on sales, and a lot of shops don't put strong emphasis on that. And I think that often translates into sort of lackluster growth over many years. And sometimes that's by design because they don't want to have a big, complicated company. They have a lifestyle company that's a certain size, and that works great for them. But can you describe a little bit of that transition from, growing from 6 to 30 million, working directly with buyers, and then getting into more strategic, big picture conversations with sourcing managers? And it's like, what were the steps along the way that you had to learn about to get yourself into those positions to, get your company at that level? Because that's pretty aspirational, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first thing that had to happen, and again, this is really all my brother. He went out and sourced an ERP system. We had a computer system, but it was typical, homegrown type operation. We didn't have an ERP, and so he ended up sourcing an ERP system and did a very good job of implementing it. But again, these were in very early days of ERP.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
I mean, you had the big guys, the SAPs and so forth, that that our customers scared the hell out of us because they told us that SAP stood for stop all production. So I wasn't really all that anxious to do it, but it made sense, and so we put together a quality IT structure, and then we were able to begin to scale the business from there. Because I mean, it's like adding seats to a restaurant. If you don't add to the kitchen, then you're going to have a lot of upset customers.
Oh, I love that analogy. That's awesome.
Yeah. So we had to build out an infrastructure, not just a machine infrastructure, but a professional people infrastructure and a professional IT structure. And again, I give all the credit to Doug for having had the foresight to make that happen. We were fortunate because we were a team, and we had different areas of expertise, and it really came at a good time.
I love that. Yeah, it reminds me, we're not brothers by blood, but my partner Kelsey, when we started our shop in the late 90s, he was very much the brains behind the operations, and I was the sales guy. And we built that company together with a couple other partners as well. I can definitely, the having complementary skill sets is such an incredibly important factor. I can't imagine running a business and growing a business like that all by myself. That would be very hard. So I have huge respect for founders that do that.
Yep, we recognize that, and it was definitely a good thing for us and for our customers and for our employees too. I mean, I wasn't equipped to do some of the things that Doug was. He certainly wasn't equipped to do the things that I was. Often we overlapped, here and there as we needed, but for the most part, it was distinct different roles, which really made us more powerful as a result.
Yeah, for sure. So did you feel like the ERP gave you the sort of the infrastructure, the backbone of your operations, if you will? Was that something that customers or prospective customers wanted to see you having before they would give you business at that higher level? Or
Oh, for sure. I mean, we did this when we were still around $6 or $7 million. So at that point, those customers didn't seem to mind. I mean, they never even asked, honestly.
Sure.
But sure, as you need to move up the food chain, to get more sophisticated, your customers are going to ask a lot of information from you, and you really need to have that information at your fingertips. I mean, quoting, for example, that's the most thankless job in any of these companies, because you're always wrong. You either win the job, you say, "Oh shoot, I didn't want to win that job," or you lose the job. You're wrong either way. I mean, that's the bottom line. So, but the ERP really helped us to be able to do a better job in that sense, especially as we quoted repeat jobs. I mean, it became so much easier to understand.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes, of course, that's a disadvantage when when you're bidding up against, a dozen different companies that don't know their cost, and you
For
do,
sure.
But hey,
Yeah.
look, at the end of the day, I'd rather go out of business feeding the ducks on a pond than working my tail off.
I like that. With it obviously takes a lot of people to ship that much revenue. Approximately how many folks did you have when you exited?
About 100. And we
Okay.
had a
Yeah.
temp. We had a mix of temps. We had
Mm-hmm.
a one of the things that helped us to grow fast was adding assembly to our operation. So,
Oh,
uh,
okay.
my philosophy was, because I had been beat up so many times with you get a part number 1, 2, 3, and you make the part, and then they go out for bid the next time, and you lose the job, and then that guy screws it up, and then you end up with it back. I mean, it was terribly disruptive,
Mm-hmm.
and it created a lot of work. So, in order to become more, as we say now, sticky,
Yeah.
um, we needed to go and move up the food chain. And so the philosophy there was to find business that was not a part number, it was an assembly number. So we became a sub-assembly company.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up changing. Well, so from when my grandfather started the company in 1941, it was AJ Hoppe Tool Works. Dad took it over in the 60s and just made it Hoppe Tool. And then, we became, successful and grow. And we said, geez, this name is a misnomer. We're not a tool company. We
Right.
don't make hammers or, wrenches or whatever. So we named, and we were really a subsystems company or a contract manufacturer.
Mm-hmm.
So we changed the name to Hoppe Technologies, which is more inclusive and representative of the type of work that we were looking to do.
Nice.
So we ended up taking on work that had soldering, and so we had to have certified, solderers and that sort of thing. And so what we were doing was we were using the temporary labor in our assembly area, and
Mm-hmm.
with that gave us an opportunity to have a look at all these people and use it as a feeder mechanism to find the people that were suitable for
Mm.
training and could enter into the machining aspect of the business.
Fascinating. How did you make that transition from parts maker to assemblies? Was that through conversations with the buyers? Like, what are you looking for? How can we provide more value to you? Or
Well, I mean, we basically just, went to them and said, look, we don't want to just be a parts supplier. What else can we do?
right.
And if you're in your customers' facilities, which I highly recommend spending as much time with customers as possible,
Mm-hmm.
physically in their
Yeah.
plant, you walk
Yeah.
around and you see what it is that they're doing, and you say, well, I could do that. I mean, I could probably
Sure.
do that cheaper than Raytheon. And
Sure.
so we were able to go to the program managers, not necessarily the buyers, because the buyers, at the end of the day, they're tasked to buy something. You know,
Right.
a program manager is tasked with managing the program, maintaining budgets, keeping the schedule, that sort of thing.
Mm.
And so we were able to go to the program managers and say, look, we can make this next higher level assembly. We can buy all the stuff, the gazintas, I call them. We can buy all the gazintas and make the housings and connectors and so forth, and just put them. And so we did one job like that with Raytheon, for example. It was a thermal weapons site for a weapon-mounted imaging camera,
Mm-hmm.
and that worked out great. And then they said, well, geez, we got another project that's similar to that. And then
Mm-hmm.
other customers started seeing what we were doing, because we tried to get the customers in the plant as often as possible too.
Right.
Equally as important to going to your customers' facilities, getting them into your facility.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to have a real first class operation, which we did. We
Right.
when we took over the business, the first thing we did was you know epoxy coat all the floors, paint everything, new lighting. It made the place so attractive that customers would come in and say, wow, I want to place my business here. This is a young, energetic, clean, safe, well-equipped factory, and these guys want to grow. So um, that gets the customers excited.
That's that is so good. This is such good advice. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think there's a lot of shops out there that don't put the same emphasis. Don't see the value in investing in having their shop be that beautiful, and that well lit, or but yeah, it can certainly pay off. And being on site in your customers and watching them put stuff together, and where are you getting that thing from, and what are, and because they'll share, because we did the same thing at our shop. They'll share, oh, it's such a pain in our butt to put this together with that. We keep having this 20% scrap rate. And like, oh, I could figure out a way to do that better than we do.
Yeah.
Like, you want me to take that headache off your shoulders? Give us a shot, right?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's management too. I mean, they got to manage all the procurement of all this. I mean, when I first started in the business, knocking on doors, I didn't know anything. So, my father gave me a New England manufacturer's directory and said, okay, hit the road, get lost. Don't come back until you have some business. That was my training. So,
right.
but, it's just important to just keep talking to these guys and asking them questions and, learning and absorbing. And then you realize that, you're on the road and the customers are all saying, oh, well, we're not interested in you at this time. We're reducing our vendor base. That's the standard, the first line of defense for the buyer. Oh, we're reducing our vendor base. Yeah. And so, my answer to that, hey, listen, when I grew up, I was told I had an answer for everything. So it got me in a lot of trouble when I was a kid, but it made me a lot of money as an adult. So, but the answer to that is, hey, great, let me help you. I love reducing the vendor base. So let me take over. If you're buying these 10 different items from 10 different companies, we'll make them all. We'll put them together. We'll take away labor. We'll take away management. But we had to be able to show them that we had the ability to do that. And that's when the ERP system became so integral to that process, because, we could show them that we had materials management capabilities, and that, we could run MRP and do the things that were very similar to what they were doing, but on a more economical scale.
Yeah, this is really good. I've long thought that to get to the level where I think you guys were at, companies, the OEM companies, they're in the business of making their products, but their project managers or supply chain, they're in the risk mitigation business. Like, they want to make sure that they get their product to their customer on time, their vendors don't drop the ball and put them in a tight spot. And so that, having good equipment is really important for your own internal efficiencies, but that's not what's going to sell the customer as much as your business systems and the proof that you have everything it takes to be super reliable and really low risk. Would you believe that? Agree with that statement?
Totally. In fact, our tagline, company's got a tagline, pardon me, ours was, our greatest ability is dependability. Because really, truly, that's what the customer's looking for. They need a dependable supplier. Yeah. I mean, the other problem that you solve by going to the next level of assembly with your customers is they don't have to worry that, they're going to have part A through, F, but they're missing C, so they can't do anything with any of this stuff. They wind up with an inventory problem. We take that off their hands by managing all of that stuff. And listen, there's risk there, Paul. So,
oh, sure.
If you're missing part C, you're screwed.
Right.
So, but as a small company, you're a little bit more on the balls of your feet. Let's put it that way. That's the polite way to say
it. Yeah, absolutely. So I was going to ask you about workforce development. Sounds like that feeder program from assembly and temp workers, that was pretty successful for you.
For sure. So this is where NTMA is a big deal for me, and it always has been in my career. I've been a member literally ever since I started working. But NTMA was meaningful to us because we were able to, instead of stealing labor from our competitors, we were able to collaborate with our competitors and say, look, what do we as a community need for people? And, it broke down the barrier that's there. One shop doesn't talk to the other shop because they stole a CMM operator, and then these guys used to play golf together all the time. Now they won't even talk. We met once a month, the shops that were engaged, and we created a program, a training program with in our community, utilizing our regional alignment board and some techniques from NTMA, and we really did establish a very high quality, pipeline of new talent into the industry. And as a result, labor really was not that big of a problem for us.
Yeah, that's huge. Now, can you contrast that today with Pilot Precision and just the labor markets today compared to back then?
Sure. Yeah. So, interestingly, there was less emphasis on vocational training, high school training back in the 90s, 80s. Well, I guess the 80s where there still was around, but the 90s and early 2000s, it was abhorrent to see what the government did, which was basically strip out everything out of anything that, might have been dangerous,
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's got to go to college and they're going to become an accountant or whatever. And all of our stuff is going to be made in China, and I'm going to cut your hair and you're going to mow my lawn, and we're going to live on the service industry. Nonsense, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
stuff good stuff is manufactured in America. And so, I think that the government finally got the memo in the, mid 2000s, and they started investing in vocational high schools. And so today there are a lot of very high quality high school training opportunities, and we're seeing that the students or the people that we're bringing in, the new people, are a lot younger than they used to be. So before, you might have somebody in their 20s or 30s that would enter the workforce. Now, we got literally kids.
Right.
They're sophomores in high school. They come to work in our plant, co-oping, and we get a good look at them. We give them a lot of training. Sometimes we hire them, sometimes we don't. But the average age has come down so much. It's just amazing. Our factory at Pilot, our engineering manager is 27. The head customer service technical support guy is like 28. We got people out in our factory that are 20, 19, 20, 25 years old.
Right.
It's awesome. And so things have changed a great deal, Paul, in terms of labor, and that is that the workforce is actually getting younger for a change.
That's exciting. How have you gotten involved with those co-op programs with the high schools?
So we have people, and we did this at Hoppe, and we do it at Pilot. We have people sitting on advisory boards of all these high schools. We want to be engaged. We want them to understand what it is specifically that we need for talent, and then of course we get to have a first look at the students. Me personally, I served on advisory boards for a couple of vocational high schools, and then spent 10 years on the board of our local community college, technical community college, helping them to grow their manufacturing program. More than doubled the manufacturing program. And that was primarily to train post-high school students. But sometimes the high school students do so well that they're able to use this, get college credits too. So anyway, it's like anything else. It's what you put in. You get out what you put in.
So besides being on the advisory boards, do you donate materials, tools, money to those programs, or how else do you contribute back to those?
Yes, and yes. You have to donate everything. You have to donate time. That's the most important. Money is very important, but that's complicated when you deal with public schools.
Yeah.
Public vocational high schools, if you give them a donation of $20,000, for example, you have to make sure it stays in the program that you want it to stay in. because, they might say, "Ooh, $20,000. We could buy 12 blenders for the culinary arts, program. We could buy a couple of weed whackers for the, landscape program." You got to say, "No, man, you can't use this money. It's restricted specifically for manufacturing technology." So that was a little bit of an uphill battle in the beginning, but now they get it. You either get the money or not. So, I mean, it has to be a public-private partnership, but we have to be able to dictate where that money goes. Otherwise, I wouldn't give it to them.
Sure.
The government can't be trusted. Imagine that.
Well, that's great advice about getting involved in schools. And I imagine that there's, in some parts of the country, there's more or less of this. I know here where we are in Washington, there is a small little aerospace kind of class thing at the local high school, but it's not big. It's they have some routers and some little things, but there is a community college with a great machining program, and at our shop we had 2 people on that advisory board for years, and would always donate materials and cutting tools and some money and yeah, what do you know, we had the cream of the crop to choose from every graduating class, because they'd come tour our shop and had a lot of great that way. So
speaking of tours, another tip that I would have: when you bring these kids to your factory, and you must, start with a tour of the parking lot.
Okay. So, at the cars that the employees are
take
driving.
a look at all the new pickup trucks and hot Mustangs and cool cars, because these kids, the first thing they get it's like a kid in the military. They get a couple of bucks in their pocket, they go out and buy a hot rod. It's great. And so when you bring the kids, the junior high kids and so forth, through your factory, you start them walk them through the parking lot. Say, look, that guy that has that new F-150, he's 19. That girl that has that Audi, she's 22, and they love it. And then they walk through and they meet the people, and it all makes sense to them. They're like, "Ooh, I can work on these cool machines and get a new car."
Such gold, man. This is great advice. So you've painted a pretty exciting picture of success for Hoppe, but at the same time said it's a really challenging business. What are some of the more challenging things you went through over the years, and how did you overcome them?
There's no question that the customers were the most challenging. And it was because of a disintegration that took place in these businesses. So instead of, back in the old days, I'm old enough to say that now, but back in the old days, a buyer would work his or her way up the food chain. So they would start in manufacturing, and then they would move to, materials or whatever. They would move around. Sure. And they would understand what was needed by the factory. And when they bought the stuff, the buyers were connected to the factory. So if I was the buyer and I changed suppliers on you, and my new supplier screwed up, you came down on me. My peer came down on me, not my boss, my peer. And then, I don't know, maybe sometime in the late 90s, early 2000s, it switched. And then they just started bringing, college kids in to do purchasing, because they said, what the hell do we need a skilled labor for the purchasing department for? It's just a spreadsheet. Just fill it out, send out the prints, fill out the numbers, send it in, low bid, they get the job. Right. And they disconnected the purchasing departments from the factories. In some cases, not even, you might have a purchasing department in New Jersey for a factory in Kansas, Sure. I mean, it was just disconnected, and that was it was by design. They didn't want anybody to have a relationship with the supplier. The relationship was, well, if I want any stuff from you, I'll squeeze your head. How's that sound? But anyway, that was what became very difficult, is that the customers were looking for the absolute cheapest price, and then they would throw it over the wall, and then the actual buyer would be very demanding, and it was just tough to make a buck doing
Sure.
that. So I would say the customers were very demanding. They became not true to their word, unfortunately. So if you signed a long-term agreement with a major aerospace OEM, which I had many, you would have all these jobs under contract. So you're responsible for material and so forth. Then all of a sudden, they're part A, B, and C to go together. But all of a sudden, you're only shipping A and B and not C. What's going on? Oh, we don't need those other ones. Well, that's because the buyer doesn't know. They're disconnected from manufacturers, so they don't know that the parts go together. Now, we do as the manufacturer, but the buyer thinks we're stupid. So they just say, well, we don't need any of those. Well, we're not stupid. We know that they can't use A and B without C.
Sure.
So then you start poking around and you find out they're buying C from somebody else. Well, wait a minute now. That's on my contract. You can't just arbitrarily move it. I've got another 3 years left on this agreement. Well, we found somebody to do it cheaper. Yeah, but it's in our contract. Well, sue us. And by the way, if you sue us, we don't do any business with you.
Yeah.
So it's a stick up.
Yeah.
It's a lousy way to do business, and so I tried my absolute best to get away from those customers, and for the most part, we did. And we found really good customers. I mean, companies like Goodrich Aerospace, for example, they were an amazing customer. They were true to their word. If they said they were going to buy something from you for a period of time, they did it. And if you gave them what they wanted, they would give you what you wanted. But we had other companies, which they're major aerospace engine OEMs, but they'll remain nameless. But they had a different philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
That became very difficult.
Did you get to the point where you had enough, call it positive sales pressure from your market that you could be selective and say, I'm not interested in working with this company anymore. I'm going to fire them as a client.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't outwardly necessarily fire anybody as a client. We just, raise the price, lengthen the lead time. It's not that we just didn't work on their stuff or whatever, because obviously if we won the jobs that we were happy about that.
Yeah.
But no, we just marginalized those companies by finding good companies to deal with. Companies like Goodrich that I mentioned, or in the defense area, DRS Technologies was a great customer, Raytheon and so forth. So we found good companies to work with, companies that really appreciated us. Not companies that would say, well, I could buy that from 10 other suppliers.
Sure. Did you go through any kind of formal process for scoring your customers, or was it just a gut feel like these guys suck, these guys are great, we're going to focus on the good guys?
These guys suck, these guys are good guys.
Okay.
No formal process.
Sure. Let's see here. I'd love to transition a little bit and talk about the exit. Can you share that journey, how long you took to prepare for it, what that process was like?
Yeah, I mean, Doug and I got good advice from our dad. And our dad's thought process was, listen, a business is a machine, rather, whose function it is to make money. So if the business doesn't make money, then change it, sell it, whatever. Just do something with it to make money. Otherwise, don't do it. And also, don't plan on transitioning the business to, you two guys are brothers, but don't plan on transitioning it to cousins and nephews and, all that other stuff, because it gets too complicated with multiple families involved and so forth. So we basically decided when we took over the business that there would be an exit at some point. And so we knew that long before, it was actually time to exit. And we never had a plan as far as, we're going to exit in 5 years or whatever. That wasn't the plan. The plan was, when it's not fun, or, there's a good reason, monetary or otherwise, then we'll make a change.
Sure.
So we ran the business, I would call it squeaky clean from a tax standpoint. We didn't, we weren't like most companies, family-owned businesses that are running the the horse feed through the operation, or whatever our hobby is.
Sure.
And so, we did a good job. We paid our taxes. We were honest with everybody. And effectively, our philosophy was run the business like it's for sale. Because then when it does come time to sell the company, you don't really have anything to apologize for. That being said, we got to the point where we said, well, maybe we'll start thinking about this. And then we started looking into it and realized that the CFO that we hadn't fully utilized the computer system. And so was still doing a lot of spreadsheets with plug numbers and that sort of thing. So we ended up changing CFOs and getting a CFO who effectively, implemented all the strategies that our ERP offered us. And so then we were truly a quote to cash ERP user.
Yep.
And then that gave us the confidence to run for another couple of years and watch the numbers. And then when we felt that we had, the business got a lot bigger over that time, which so it was an advantage that we had made those changes. But then once we felt we were ready to go, we were able to print financial statements out of our system. They're very reliable. There's always auditing, obviously, that needs to take place and that sort of thing. But we became a marketable company because we had believable quality numbers, and frankly, our business had grown dramatically, and we made a lot of money.
Perfect. And then, so did you engage with a broker, or how did you actually go about the sales process? What was that like?
So we engaged with a broker, which was good and bad. We ended up with a deal maker. His name was John, and he was fantastic. We really liked the guy, and he understood us and so forth. And unfortunately, right at maybe 2/3 of the way through the deal, when we had LOIs on the table, we were ready to go, John had an aortic aneurysm.
Oh no.
So he didn't die, but he was just totally out of the picture and was unable to string two sentences together, never mind cut a deal.
Sure.
So one of the principals of the M&A firm, the investment banker firm, stepped in, and unfortunately he didn't know us, and like John did, and so because it was our first company to sell, we were really relying on these guys. And unfortunately, his business is to sell companies, so he's basically just pick these guys, they're the best deal, go forward with them. And so we did, and unfortunately, when we started doing our due diligence on them, we realized that they, as we peeled the onion back, that they were not who they said they were. They misrepresented themselves. And so I was in the very unenviable position of having to pull the plug on the deal. And so unfortunately, we had 3 very solid LOIs, and we signed the wrong one, and we killed the deal. And you want to talk about fatigue. I mean, I spent basically a year working on putting a deal together, which meant that, other people in the business, my brother and our other, teammates, had to shoulder the burden of my not being around, because I was working pretty much full time on the exit.
Right.
So it was a really ugly situation. And then we went to see one of the other companies that was ready to buy us, and they were in Michigan, and the suitors.
One of the sort of backup LOIs.
Yeah, they didn't, he was a gentleman about it. I mean, really a gentleman about it, but he's like, listen, man, we moved on. You moved on, we moved on. So, so anyway, at that point, I was just smoked. I mean, I didn't want to do it anymore. I just needed to go back to work.
Right.
So, so I did. I made the choice. Hey, listen, this isn't going to happen right now. So the good news is we got a great company. We're just going to run it. And of course, like everybody that has a successful business, I got emails and telephone calls and faxes and so forth that said, "Hey, we want to buy your company." And most of the time I'd ignore them. But I don't know. I think I was just at a low point, and one day I got one of these messages, and I picked up the phone and I called the guy, and I said, "Is this for real, or are you pulling my leg?" And he's like, "No, no, no, it's for real." I'm like, "All right, listen, this is the deal. If your buyer really wants to talk to me, I'll be in Anaheim next week, setting up for a trade show, and I'll meet him for lunch on Monday at 11 a.m. at the facility. If he shows up, great. If he doesn't, I'm going to have my lunch. So it making no difference to me."
Right.
Sure as heck, the fellow showed up, and I said, "Wow, these guys are serious, and this is an opportunity." So I said, "Look, I can't discuss my company with you. I'll discuss my company with you. In fact, I won't discuss it with you for 90 days. He said, "I understand." He got the picture. So anyway, immediately I fired the broker and let the tail go out, and then I was able to engage with a new buyer on my own, and we ended up selling the company to those guys, ironically enough.
Wow. And so I imagine on the second turn you had a lawyer representing you, but you weren't using a broker at that point, or a
Pretty much, yeah. I ended up doing everything myself. But by that time I had learned a lot. So I kind of knew what I was doing at that point. But the lawyer, his name's Scott, the lawyer was great. I mean, he was terrific, actually.
What was that elapsed time from when you pulled the plug in the other one till you had this lunch with this other guy?
Probably 90 days.
Oh, okay. So
yeah, it wasn't that long. And then once I realized that I was, I hadn't even, it's not that I really felt like I needed to fire these guys. I mean, they blew it. So,
right.
But legally, I called my lawyer. I said, "Hey, what do I do here?" He said, "Just don't talk about anything to do with your company with anybody, and let the tail go, and then, and then you can engage at whatever level you want." So that's what we did. I basically told the fellow, "Look, we can't talk about this. I'm happy to, get to know you and so forth, but we're not going to talk about business." But I said, "I'll be at an NTMA meeting in 90 days in Phoenix. And if you want to talk to me again, meet me there."
Right.
And lo and behold, he did.
Right.
So, and then at that point, we were free to have that discussion, and we ultimately sold the company to those guys.
Can I ask what the first company misrepresented about themselves that made you pull the plug?
Definitely. Fundamental stuff. So first of all was money. So they told us they were putting down X amount of dollars and financing Y amount of dollars to get to the purchase price. And when I called my bank to let them know that I was going to sell my company, that I had a signed LOI, they said, "Well, who's buying it?" I told them. "Who are they financing through?" And I told them. "How much are they financing?" And I told them. He said, "That doesn't make any sense." He said, "I know the bank that they're talking about, and that deal exceeds their house limit. So, either they're going to have to put up more money, or they're going to need another bank, but they're not going to finance it through that bank." So he said, "I would do the deal. Our bank can do it, and we like you guys, and we would love to hang on to your business. So if you want to keep that deal together, then introduce me to them," which I did. And then they said, "Okay, fine, we'll finance with these guys." But huge red flag. I mean,
right. Yeah.
How do you come to the deal table without the money, right?
Right.
So, so that one really threw me for a loop. Then one of the things that we were interested in was because we had an earnout was part of the deal. And basically an earnout is, you have to make such and such a profit or whatever your forecast is, and then we'll pay you more money essentially on the exit. And so because there was an earnout in it, and part of their attractiveness to me personally was that they had supposedly this very, very close relationship with Boeing in Seattle, and they were going to bring us all kinds of business from Boeing. And so we said, okay, well, this is good. I mean, we'll make the earnout just on our own probably, but we'll do better with their, connections. So I said, I want to meet, Mr. Yes at Boeing.
Right.
Oh, well, we're going to do that eventually. And, but for now, we just want to meet all your customers. And I said, well, okay. I said, we already went through a pretty rough spat with the financing, which I helped you with. So now we're going to do it my way. We're going to meet
Sure.
Mr. Yes. Well, Mr. Yes turned out to not exist. And at that point, I said, oh, we're done. I mean, these guys don't have any money and they don't have the connections. What else are they misrepresenting? And so we pulled the plug.
Yeah. You do have to be careful about those earnouts. When we sold our shop, there wasn't that sort of promise for new business, but they're now sort of in control of the company and deciding how much to put towards marketing or sales or whatever. And yet we're on the hook for the targets to finish the rest of the earnout. So not get all of our earnout. So it's a good lesson learned about making sure that things are in place to make sure you're going to succeed on that. So,
yeah. Once it's not your game, you're done. I mean, you don't have the control anymore. So they put management fees. I mean, there's all kinds of things that they could do to screw up your EBITDA so you don't get paid. These guys didn't. The people that we ended up selling it to, that was not their MO. They were great.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like one of the themes of this whole thing is to try to work with great people and don't work with shitty people.
That's a good way to put it, Paul. Yeah, I mean, integrity is everything. You have to really have a high level of integrity to be successful in this business, whether it's with your employees, your suppliers, your customers. And ultimately, if you're going to have an exit, it's got to be with your buyer.
Right. Yeah.
First, you have to be right with God, and then you've got to be right with everybody else.
Sure. Well, I would love to, as we kind of wrap up here, I'd love to just hear a little bit more about Pilot and let you share with the audience what you guys do, what that's been like to start it and grow that a little bit.
Yeah. So, I respected the non-compete, obviously, in the business. And so I went off and did some other things in real estate and that sort of thing. A lot of volunteer work. I gave back a lot after I sold the business. And then I decided I was ready to go back to a real job. And so I bought a little company called Dumont in Greenfield. They manufactured keyway brooches. And it was a pretty old company. It was very tired, needed a lot of technology infusion. So I bought that business and spent about $2 million on capital equipment, ERP system, basically kind of re-energizing what we did at Hoppe at Dumont. Then I bought the competitor a year later, a company called Hoppe Savage. They were a spinoff from a couple of employees that went rogue and started their own broaching manufacturing company. So I put those two companies back together, and then we began doing distribution, import, master wholesaling, basically buying high-quality cutting tools from manufacturers in Europe, France, Italy, Portugal, and so forth to bring in and import those tools into America and sell them through the distribution network that we have, both Hoppe Savage and Dumont had. So I called the company Pilot Precision Products because I named my dog after my passion, which is flying. And and then when we named the company, I'm like, what are we going to call this company? And I looked at my dog and I said, we'll call it Pilot. So so that's how the business got its name. It's named after my dog. It's a great name because it really is.
It's like a pilot hole for brooches. There's all sorts of...
there's a lot of ways to skin that cat. But so Pilot now is we're the largest we're really the largest brooch manufacturer in North America. We're the only standard industrial keyway brooch manufacturer in this hemisphere. And we do have some competition, mainly from China and India, knockoff type operations, low quality, but cheap harbor freight quality type stuff. And then we've expanded the business dramatically to get into more custom broaching tools. So we're doing a lot of very complicated spline broaches and pull broaches for production, for aerospace gears, for automotive, a lot in the firearms business. We've basically designed and built standard broaches for making firearms, every application, breech faces, magazine wells, and so forth. So any kind of high volume standardized products we will make a kit for, including CNC broaching. So not just linear broaching, but CNC indexable CNC broaching as well. So now the business does everything from broaching through micro drills, micro reamers, and very small, high performance, high quality tools to full indexable carbide cutting tool line with our manufacturer called Paulbit in Portugal.
Very exciting. That's cool.
Yeah, thanks.
What a great story.
I would encourage everybody to look on our website, pilotprecision.com. We've got a great catalog with e-commerce. We sell through everybody's industrial distributor, so you don't have to do anything different to buy from us. So,
right.
But this is a lot different than Hoppe. Hoppe I sold direct to the end user,
Sure.
and now we sell through a channel.
Got it. I imagine that's a learning curve all on its own, just how that all works. And
yeah, but it's been good. I really like the customers in the cutting tool business. As an end user, previously an end user, I have a unique outlook on how things should be done in the cutting tool business. So my sophistication level in my business and the customer commitment and so forth is a great deal more meaningful than perhaps a larger competitor who's never actually been on the other side of the negotiating table.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, that's in our main day job. That's we used to have a machine shop, right? So we understand.
There you go.
From the other side as well. So there's a lot of value in that.
Yep.
Well, Eric, you dropped so many fantastic knowledge bombs. I know that people are going to get a ton out of this. Some great practical advice, from starting tours in the parking lot to visiting your customer shops and having them visit yours. And so thank you so much for everything. This has been a fantastic episode. I know people will love it.
Well, I've enjoyed getting to know you, Paul, and NTMA, and our community, manufacturing community, is better off because of engagement of folks like us and those that participate.
Yes. So yes, call to action to anyone listening: join NTMA or other
absolutely
organizations. They're worth their weight in gold. And thank you, Eric. We'll see you around another event soon. And I appreciate your time today. It's been awesome.
Outstanding. Take care. Thanks, Paul.
Sir.